What's good, cannabis investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis News from July 1st to the 7th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it as it helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. And then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. Try to think of these videos as a time capsule. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the US cannabis industry, identify top US MSOs that you keep seeing pop up that you think will be worth more in the future than they are now based on their current market caps, and new markets likely coming online shortly like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Florida, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so. And just want to wish everyone a happy Canada Day if you're in Canada, or a happy 4th of July if you're in the States. Hopefully you keep the bender going into the weekend. And with that, we share the good news as Maryland cannabis sales hit $1.1 billion in first year of legalized rec use. Booyah. We love when a market does it right, and Maryland is certainly leading the way. Looking really good right now is Governor Westmore's office, which has been overseeing much of the state's implementation of last year's Cannabis Reform Act, said Wednesday that rec sales from July 2023 through June 2024 totaled more than $700 million for adult use, with medical sales totaling nearly $400 million. Not bad, as our new adult use cannabis market isn't only generating extraordinary economic activity, as if that's not a great thing to be able to say, it's also helping us build new pathways to work, wages, and wealth for all. Because when you create a market from the bottom up, the American way, providing equal access to opportunity to the best of those that can possibly compete, you see a good thing happen. In the first 9 months of legalization netted the state around $41.4 million in revenue from a 9% tax on rec purchases, and around a third of that revenue is placed into the state fund that is then distributed to communities based on how heavily they were impacted by cannabis prohibition. Of course, this sounds great in theory, and it's awesome to prove that ending prohibition works so that we can have a legal market where people can vote with their dollars to offset the illicit market. But the main thing is that the people in Maryland over time will have to hold those accountable that have the power to redistribute to make sure that they're doing that properly. And so, of course, links in the comments, but with that, on in New Mexico, just highlighting why a well-regulated cannabis industry will contribute to any state's economic development, job growth, tax revenue, and safe access to the miracle medicinal plant that is cannabis that we still don't know a whole lot about. We ought to know more. But with that, June 2024 sales, med sales hit 11.5, adult use sales hit 36.5 for a total of 48 million, down a little bit from May, which was in line with April, I should say, but then down from March. But also note that we always see the 3 spikes in a year: March, July, and December. So while we've been down and heading down slightly since March, I imagine we're going to see a big July up, and I will report on that next month. Links all in the comments. With that, happy to report that Illinois is back on the fast track with doing this, because I think just last week I shared their May results, which they took until the end of June to publish, basically, but now as of July 3rd they've already published June. So happy to recap. For May is to be expected, with less items sold, less in-state resident sales, and less out-of-state resident sales for a total of 141.7. But keep in mind, it's not really summer yet, and like every market, like New Mexico as mentioned, we see a big jump in March sales, then comes down a little bit before summertime when people are out enjoying their lives, spending dollars, going to music festivals, and then it'll trend back down a little bit into December, where we typically see the year record or a new record set. And so links in the comments. But with that, I wish I had a nice update out of Ohio that, like, hey, adult use is a go, though that's likely going to be coming this week since it hasn't come yet. All that to say is these headlines that teased us as if Ohio was within weeks away are very friggin' annoying, and more lessons to be learned. 4 Ohio cannabis companies appear to gain advantage in lottery for dispensary site selections. Take from that what you will. This was updated as of July 2nd. Main thing just to highlight that, in other words, all 126 med cannabis dispensaries in Ohio can transition to adult use sales, aka the dual licensure when the green light is a go, and that's essentially what we're waiting on. But in addition, medical cannabis companies, cultivators, and retailers are eligible to receive additional dispensary licenses for facilities that don't exist yet, aka a 10B dispensary license, if you're interested in what that is. So you can pause to read, but the main thing is that in this article from Cannabis Business Times, it is highlighting, I think, the 4 winners of this possible license. And so take from that what you will. It's not any of the MSOs from my understanding. And if there's something I'm missing in here, please let me know in the comments. But that's just an update out of Ohio. We want that to turn on so badly. While out of Florida, this is not about Trump, more or less. This is about the fact that a poll conducted June 26th to 29th, obtained by Florida Politics, found an overwhelming majority of Florida voters support Amendment 3, which would legalize rec cannabis for those 21 and older. And so at more than 64% support and 63 is needed for the ballot to pass, the poll predicts the amendment could could easily reach the 60% +1 threshold for passage. And is it not blatantly obvious to the Trump team by now that if you were to just come out and say, Floridians, I support your right to vote for whatever initiative makes it on the ballot without interference from the AG or the governor, and then make the states' rights argument should supersede federal rights as they ought to, how he would not lock in Florida and possibly even better chance at the presidency unless the Dems allow RFK to slide in there and make things more and more interesting. But with that, more details. All we know, though, is that all eyes are on Florida in November. While from the Leaf Online, a bit of a sketchier looking site, but main thing to highlight is when you end cannabis prohibition, it works. Legal cannabis generates $20 billion in tax revenue. Now, this is recycled content, so I do apologize in the sense, but just using the data to prove from Marijuana Policy Project, highlighting what has been generated thus far since the first state to legalize. Colorado did it in 2012. So 2 more states to come online. That is Delaware and Ohio, while Virginia has decriminalized but are not creating a commercial market. But for anyone that hasn't seen this before, total breakdown of 2023 alone, while from 2012 up until 2024, over or roughly $20 billion so far. While sharing this one from MSOX, because while it's been a long time coming, I certainly do hope he's right that this plus HOPE Act, Graham Act, and eventually the safer banking that should have been passed a fucking decade ago, coupled with S3, final rule, and we have reform officially started. Now, can we trust this vampire to act in the best interest of the American people and not his donors? Absolutely not. So we're not holding our breath, but I want to applaud Troy Carter and Rep. Armstrong for the bipartisan Cannabis Misdemeanor Expungement Act to create an expungement mechanism for low-level federal cannabis violations and provide an expedited, orderly process to help clear non-felony offenses lingering in the system. Will it actually do anything as opposed to Biden's lip service of pardons at the federal level? I don't know. I hope so for the Americans that have had to deal with the bullshit. And so let's hope that it does do some sort of good and adds to the whole overall reform package that we need to get safe and everything finally done and this next incremental step finalized. But I'll put the link down here in the comments if any of y'all are interested. But on to the speculation of the week, because even though nobody knows what the fuck the recent Chevron ruling ultimately means for the rescheduling process that is already well underway, all I can say is I do stand with these guys in thinking that Chevron is irrelevant here in my opinion, and it's not going to derail anything, obviously. It applies to agencies overstepping their regulations. And funny enough, had we gotten this Chevron deference ruling 2 years ago or 3 years ago, would that be grounds for SCOTUS to say, hey, you know when the DEA said cannabis has no medical value in 2016, which we all knew was bullshit? That's a lie. The Schedule 1 classification is unconstitutional. Take cannabis out of there. Like, it's possible that could have come then, but it's also possible it can still come now, right? That's what I'm thinking. So correct me if I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments. While DEA and HHS have explicit authorization via Congress to schedule the drugs, as we've seen throughout this entire process, they're simply following that process. There's been no administrative freelancing or legislating happening to warrant judicial intervention. And so a bit more here. I do believe Chris Norman is a lawyer, so just some takes from him and then other people commenting for a bit more context. All that to say, the same time this week we got this story. Federal court dismisses the cannabis company's lawsuit challenging prohibition, and that was the Boies lawsuit. So obviously many would see that and think, what the heck? That's not very good. But many would also say, oh, that was part of the plan, and then they can appeal it to the Supreme Court, because apparently that is what this means, but says cannabis laws warrant re-examination, as the relief sought is inconsistent with binding Supreme Court precedent and beyond the authority of this court to grant. So is it possible this was the game plan all along, to get out of federal court and get to the Supreme Court? According to Jason Wild, who's in one of the MSOs that is leading the court case with Boies, seems to be the game plan is, wait, what? As the court stated that the plaintiffs have raised persuasive reasons for a reexamination of the way the Controlled Substances Act regulates cannabis. Imagine outright descheduling from the Supreme Court because they no longer have to listen to what an agency says, especially when it's bullshit. And the court specifically stated that the plaintiffs can pursue their claims and seek the attention of the Supreme Court. Holy shit, could it actually pan out this way? Of course, I'm just an idiot on the internet speculating. Don't take my word for it. Plan accordingly for your own situation. And so just to summarize all that we've gone through there, all part of the plan. As lawyers for cannabis companies are appealing the dismissal of their lawsuit that seeks to block enforcement of federal prohibition against their state legal activities. And while that story came out July 1st, this is as of July 4th already. And so the next stop for the case is the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit. And so, was it all part of the plan? You tell me. Let me know in the comments. But it seems almost as if they knew how they were going to go about it this whole time. Well, Admin.law, one of the more vocal lawyers on cannabis Twitter, especially around this topic, reschedule 3 for MJ. This SCOTUS op is important. In eventual litigation, a critical showdown will occur right out of the gates, whether to stay the effect of the rule and 280E relief, etc., pending litigation, or not, possibly. And so SCOTUS discusses standards here at length. This link will be in the comments, though it looks hella boring to read, and I doubt anyone will. So we'll just try and update you on all the new stories that come through. But with that, to highlight from Todd Harrison sharing a conclusion from admin.law's write-up, as you can see, DEA's reasons for keeping cannabis in Schedule 1, as of now, with everything we know, are indefensible. And so that's why I'm kind of banking on this. This was my wild card. Clarence Thomas, save us. The only reason they survived judicial review is that they were blessed by the DC Circuit during the reign of a style of reflexive Chevron deference that courts have long since abandoned. Now, the president's scheduling directive gives DEA and FDA an opportunity to right a ship that veered off course long ago and say, finally right the past wrongs. About damn time. To do so, however, the agencies will have to, at long last, abandon the absurd interpretations of the CSA that have kept cannabis in Schedule 1 unlawfully for decades. And in Part 3, which I'll post soon, I'll go through the various ways the impending scheduling review can make that happen and provide my thoughts about what the administration can and should do to get this right. And so I'll post the link to his Substack as well in the comments if you want to go through that. But I think the main thing to highlight here is, as you can see, DEA's reasons for keeping cannabis in Schedule 1 are indefensible. And the last time they were able to keep it in Schedule 1 was 2016 because they were able to say it had no medical value because of that Chevron deference. With that gone, what difference can it make? Let me know in the comments, because, man, this is just getting more and more entertaining. Netflix has no chance against reality. Well, from the Dales Report, they had an interview with Eric Berlin of Dentons and wanted to share this clip because they make a really good point here. So I'll play this at 1.5 for a few minutes.
I think the light went off, you said earlier. They're just trying to delay the process to get the Trump administration in to look at things differently. But like you said, do you think they get that extended window? Darren, I saw you nodding your head and agreeing with a lot of what Eric just said. You want to maybe elaborate on what he's mentioned and why you're agreeing?
Yeah, I mean, look, so a couple of things. Number one, I think it's also important to contextualize. Had we gotten this decision 1 year ago today, we would all be in the streets cheering. And the reason for that is the Chevron has been used in many ways, and in particular in this way, by this DEA as a way of stopping rescheduling. And just to simplify it, basically, they put this test together and they said, this is the test that has to be met in order to determine that there's an accepted medical use for cannabis. And they made a test that cannabis can't possibly meet because one of the things they looked at was FDA approval. Okay. And of course, we can't have FDA approval because you can't have research and yada, yada, yada. In this case, by doing away with Chevron, they created an avenue by which that test could be challenged.
Yep.
And now they've chosen a test, a two-part test that they've done instead through this process that is much closer to the statute, to the language of the statute. And I think that this is one of the things that gets overlooked, just how masterful this process has been, even though it has seemed slow at times.
So get your popcorn ready, folks. I have not finished this. I was just listening to it while I was setting this up, but definitely going to check out the rest of it later. They talk a lot of common sense and help reassure that everything is in motion. All we can do is patiently wait and, again, plan accordingly for your own situation. Links in the comments. But with that, on to some studies from PubMed. This one from May 2024. An open-label feasibility trial of transdermal cannabidiol for hand osteoarthritis. And so, of course, hand osteoarthritis is an irreversible degenerative condition causing chronic pain and impaired functionality. And so in summary, though, of course, you can pause to read the entire abstract. Pain, grip strength, and quality of life measures using smartphone technology was shown to improve over time following transdermal CBD application, suggesting feasibility of this intervention in relieving osteoarthritic hand pain. Proof of efficacy, however, requires further confirmation in a placebo-controlled randomized trial. Fair enough. Bring it on. I'm sure cannabis will certainly, or at least CBD, will outcompete the placebo in this one. But main thing to highlight, doesn't belong in the Schedule 1. Never did. And hopefully we see the day where it's removed. Well, or at least from the CSA completely, can using cannabis decrease diabetes risk from July 3rd, 2024. Main thing to highlight, cannabis users may have a healthier inflammatory cytokine profile, better insulin sensitivity, and higher levels of physical activity than non-users. Pretty much puts all the other prohibitionist talking points from the past few decades out of the water here, saying that we're not lazy and we happen to actually have better respiratory systems and are healthier, all of which can be linked to a potentially lower risk for diabetes, ongoing research suggests. So that's fascinating. Again, don't want to make this video too long, so I invite you to pause to read if you're interested. Otherwise, you can grab the full link in the comments to go through that, but I'll just share a few spots. Otherwise, if you just wanted to pause and read some of what it says. Well, last thing to highlight, cannabis use motivations, poll results, June 27th. Bit of an older one, but main thing to highlight, why the plant is finally being normalized, why it's high time for the discrimination against any cannabis users or anyone in the industry, anyone that's been criminalized for however long, especially falsely, why people use this miracle plant and why it should be removed from the CSA completely so we could research it to really figure out all of the potential uses that it has. But recent poll by NUG-MD looked at the main motivation for using cannabis, and it appears most are doing so primarily for medical reasons. When respondents were asked their main goal when using cannabis, pain relief 25%, anxiety relief 23%. And notice how distributed that is, right? A lot of uses for different reasons. Stress relief 18%, rec use 13%, depression relief 12%, insomnia relief 7%, other 2%. The fact that sleep isn't even on there, to me, is wild. When respondents were asked when they typically consume it, 48% selected any time, following by 29% choosing evenings and 11% at bedtimes. And the effects most sought were relaxation, euphoria, and energy. Like, who doesn't want a little bit of that before you can go to bed, fall right asleep, and then start the next day fresh? So, conducted in 2024 and comprised of 6,550 respondents. So, full link in the comments to go through that. But happy to relay that MSO news. We've got second quarter earnings coming already, nearly a month away. GreenThumb Industries told second quarter 2024 earnings conference call on August 5th, 2024. And so look out, less than a month away because we're already the 6th now. And they'll be doing that after the market closes on Monday. While Air Wellness to hold second quarter 2024 conference call on August 7th, my brother's birthday, nice, at 8 a.m. Before market opens. And so look out for them on August 7th. While VRNO will report their second quarter 2024 financial results on August 7th as well, before the market opens, also at the same time as Air. So we'll be expecting those on the same day on a Wednesday, while Curaleaf is set to report their second quarter 2024 financial and operational highlights also on August 7th, same day as Air and VRNO, but after market. And so we will have GreenThumb on Monday, August 5th, reporting after the market closes. And then so far we've got Air Wellness and VRNO on the morning of August 7th, and then Curaleaf in the aftermarket of then. And so with that, this past week, Trulieve to open Florida medical cannabis dispensaries in Madison, Panama City. So we've got 2 here. This one as of July 1st. While this one also as of July 2nd makes it for a 3rd dispensary of Trulieve opening this past week. So they're clearly wanting to get a better grip on Florida while they can, and good to see them focusing on what they can control, keeping their head down and opening up more shops. Links in the comments if you want to check them out. While from the Dales Report, I think this is a great informative article from them too. So hey, if anyone from the Dales Report catches this, do more like this. This is awesome. SG&A, selling goods administrative margin. What does it mean? And ranking MSOs by their margins. And so just to give you a quick breakdown, SG&A expenses include salaries, marketing, rent, utilities, and office supplies. The SG&A margin is the percentage of revenue consumed by these expenses, and it's basically the costs that any costs that exclude the cost of goods sold. So whatever costs don't go into the producing cannabis and getting it distributed and selling it, all other costs essentially. And so the idea is you want to keep your SG&A lower than higher. So if a company has a 31% SG&A, that means for each dollar of revenue, 31 cents goes to these expenses. And so yeah, ideally, the lower your SG&A, let's say 25% margin, is better than a 35% SG&A margin. And so why are they so important? Operational efficiency, profitability, comparative analysis, trend analysis. When analyzing earnings press releases, consider these trends in SG&A margins. So pause to read if any of you all are interested, but why this is a great article. What trends have been observed in the U.S. MSOs cannabis marketplace regarding SG&A? And so just going to leave it here so you can read that top part if you're interested. But main thing to highlight, who's got the lowest? Ascend Wellness Holdings, then GreenThumb, then Curaleaf, then surprisingly the Cannabis Company. I'm happy to see them there. At least this highlights that they're not blowing excess amounts of money where they shouldn't be, because if you want to keep these slim while keeping your profits, not as slim as this, of course. Well, Cresco Labs, then Goodness Growth, then Trulieve, then C21 Investments, then TerraSend, then VRNO Holdings, then Air Wellness, then Maramid, then Acreage, then Jushi, then Vexed Science, then Glasshouse Brands, then Grown Rogue, then Gold Flora, then Planet 13 Holdings, then Forefront Ventures. This seems excessive, but I mean, Planet 13 Holdings, aren't they a theme park pretty much? So nonetheless, definitely an informative article by them, and link is in the comments if you want to grab that. Well, from Greenwave Advisors, a snapshot of the Tier 1 tax positions, excuse me, at the end of Q1, including amounts reclassified as uncertain tax liabilities is illustrated below. According to Greenwave Advisors, as of today, GreenThumb, Trulieve, and Cresco Labs have sufficient levels of cash on hand to pay taxes owed, while the remaining fall short. And so, while Trulieve did receive a $100 million refund, but nonetheless the IRS asserts that although the law has not changed, some taxpayers are filing amended returns and yada yada. While it's not clear whether this speaks to Trulieve and whether they will actually get that money back. The silver lining is the favorable outcome of the Boies-Schiller litigation, making the IRS irrelevant in this regard, though it remains unclear as to when the 280E clock would stop and how far back and how much money would be refunded and how long it takes till we actually get to this point, right? Because while we want it to end, it continues to get dragged on, and that's out of our control. Playing devil's advocate, because sure, if anyone can fuck with you, it is the IRS. But they fucked with cannabis users for the last 70, 80 years, and so it is very clear that 280 is not sustainable, and a final ruling on Schedule 3 has to happen, and it will. So I'm choosing to focus on this fact because the industry is too big to let fail at this point. Plus, we know that this industry is one of the few American industries changing the status quo for the better, where you have opioid overdoses going down where you introduce a medical cannabis dispensary, or you have real estate values actually go up. You have quality of life go up when you provide a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative to opioids or addictive pills. You have youth use go down. You have impaired driving go down. You have alcohol use go down. All these amazing side effects. And I firmly believe it only takes a little bit of good to fix a whole lot of wrong and bullshit. And while that's not necessarily fair, that's why I'm putting my money where my mouth is and betting on this. And so if you're new to my channel and you don't know who to invest in, I mean, clearly what this means is that the three safest investments at this point would be these companies that can create cash flow from operations and still manage to pay their taxes in this current environment. While these three you could deem a bit riskier because they can't. However, at some point, 280E is supposed to go away. And so that's going to be a whole lot more profit and bottom lines for these MSOs. And so with that, on to one of the last state news. Nebraska examiner as medical cannabis advocates turn in signatures seeking Nebraska ballot access. And so this is for med only, but good to see them getting the signatures needed done, as they collected signatures until the very last moment Wednesday before turning in more than 114,000 for its two petitions by mid-afternoon. And this is Nebraskans for medical cannabis. So hey, thank you guys for making this effort, and hopefully you help provide that safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative to those in Nebraska that need it, and y'all start seeing a better quality of life, because it just happens that way. And so with that, cannabis on prescription is booming, requirements like IBU 600. And so this is an update from Germany. Happy to share it, mainly because since cannabis legalization, the medical cannabis business has been growing rapidly. The behavior of some providers raises doubts as to whether only those who are ill are addressed, or whether the high demand is also due to recreational consumers. Well, no shit, but the CDU is alarmed and SPD undecided. Obviously, everyone's now claiming that they're sick so that they can get cannabis card. It's not anything different than what happened earlier in Canada or the US. And so, main thing, so fast, so easy. The medical cannabis business in Germany is booming. The aspect of cannabis legalization receives little public attention. Since April 1, the medical cannabis market has almost doubled. The Bloomwell Group, which provides both doctors and pharmacies with the digital platform of medical cannabis, reports massive growth when asked. The number of patients who make use of the group's mediation service increased by 1,000% in April alone compared to the average of the previous 12 months. And this is, of course, in thanks to cannabis being removed from the list of drugs listed in the Narcotics Act, as it never belonged there in the first place. And obviously Germans understand that cannabis is medicine, hence why they pushed for it, hence now they got it, hence why month over month prescriptions are doubling. Patients pay themselves. Apparently most are paid privately. From my understanding, I thought there was going to be some sort of a system with medical where insurance would cover it, but it's likely on an individual case-by-case basis based on their own insurance. Well, another thing to point out, cannabis companies had expected more. Now, this is where the article kind of gets shitty because I'm going to point out something that is unfortunate about it, but we don't hear about really any German cultivation companies or any operations like that, right? Mainly because in 2018 or 2019, a long time ago, and I'll try to find the link and put it in the comments, Germany gave permission to 3 producers to come and build a production or cultivation facility in Germany and grow it there. And 2 of them were Canadian LPs, Tilray and Aurora Cannabis. And then the third one, I believe, was Demican. So a bit more detail here. Green Breeze belongs to the Bloomwell Group. In the meantime, the telemedical physician broker Algiacare and Grüne Breeze, the platform for pharmacies, operate together under the Bloomwell brand. Then Grünhorn, in turn, belongs to the listed cannabis group Tilray. Nice to get a nod from Tilray, but then they basically just made a false claim because in Canada and several U.S. states, which Tilray cannot legally distribute to, Tilray also distributes and promotes cannabis for rec use because it is legal there. That's false. So this person clearly is misinformed. Anyways, a bit more here, expertise from the manufacturer. So unfortunately, that slip up makes this article not the most reputable, but millions of potential patients, and it seems like they are rushing to phase 2 for an adult use market because they clearly see the need for it. And so with that, folks, just going to jump over to this one and bring it back to simpler times and exciting times that we lived through last presidential election season when my thing eventually loads. This is... And to think I restarted the computer. All that to point out. All right, we got it finally. So wanted to just relay what I was saying though. Lows of March 2020 all the way through to February 2021 highs. Now, obviously history doesn't repeat exactly, but it certainly rhymes. And one thing we're going to go through is the fact that from March all the way up to February of the next year, this was when MSO's earnings looked exceptionally good because their revenues were increasing and they were seeing 20% growth month over month, 100% growth year over year. Essentially though, because the stage had been set, from however many 12 months before then, and then with the lockdowns, cannabis deliveries, cannabis deemed essential, of course, and Biden giving money out to everybody. Hence, it just created the perfect environment for that. Now, clearly, we don't have that same environment. However, what we do have is going to be 280E removed going forward so that when MSOs report their earnings at some point, and again, we don't know when that is, but it will be at some point. And so when MSOs do release their new earnings in Q2, Q3, Q4 going forward, and then into next year, they're likely only going to be better. Now, the revenue growth isn't going to be as high. It will be higher for MSOs that have exposure to new markets coming online. But the main thing is that they're going to have an excess of profits, and they're going to be way more profitable. And I think that is ultimately way more important and way more attractive in the long run. Just to show you some examples, August 17th, 2020, this is Q2 from Curaleaf. Notice Q2 up from Q1, 121 mil up from 105, 16% quarter over quarter because the conditions were set. Lock everyone down, deem cannabis essential, deliver cannabis, give everyone stimulus checks. Should have known that 120% year over year change would not be sustainable. Silly young amateur investor me, but you live and learn. And to be honest, most of my energy and bandwidth was given to Aphria and the potential Tilray merger, so I started only paying attention to these MSOs quite late. Now, wanted to share GreenThumb. June 30th ending 119 up from 102, another big jump. While 119 up from the same time the year prior, 44 million. Crazy growth, right? And GreenThumb actually net loss of 12.9 then, so not even close profitability, but the growth is clearly what investors were seeing and investing into. While Cresco Labs ending June 30th, 94 million up from 66 million, up from 29.8 million a year ago at that time, right? Unbelievable revenue growth, unsustainable revenue growth, but also not profitable. Net loss across the boards here as well. And so lastly, Trulieve, which was the healthiest until they bought Harvest. Man, I miss seeing these beautiful margins that they had way back in the day. But all that to point out, June 30th, total revenue 120, March 30th, 96, and then a year prior, 57.9. So unbelievable, unsustainable year-over-year changes, massive quarter-over-quarter revenue growth, but most of these companies still were not profitable. And I think Trulieve was one of the few, other net income 5 or 6.6. So Trulieve, again, was the healthiest back then. But all that to point out, that was Q2 of August of 2020. And if we look at this chart, August is only here. August spans from here. And notice, August is pretty much a pullback down to September. When these amazing earnings come out, we see the run pull back. And then all this came after that as we got into Q3 and Q4 earnings. And so I didn't include them in this video, but I will grab links for Q3 and Q4 of 2020 and put them in the comments so that you can reference them. And I just think the stage is set similar to the way it was then. We're going to see it play out differently, but we are going to see something bigger than we likely ever would have expected. Now, it could be wrong, but I don't think I will be. You let me know in the comments what you think. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos. And I will catch you for This Week in Cannabis News next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.